Have you ever looked in the mirror and see someone you no longer recognize? One early morning, with sunlight streaming through the window, you're standing there, brushing your hair, buttoning your shirt, and then you stop. Not because of anything dramatic, just because you suddenly notice a new wrinkle, another strand of gray hair. Or maybe it's just something in your eyes that looks different. When you were younger, you might not have thought much about whether you were attractive. You walked, talked, worked, and somehow there were always glances that followed you, casual compliments, friendly laughter, simply because you were there. But then time passes, and at some point, you begin to wonder, am I still attractive? Do people still see me the way they used to? Or have I slowly faded into the background, quiet and forgotten? That feeling, I understand. That moment of stillness in front of the mirror. Not because you're weaker, but because you're not sure what kind of impression you still leave. You don't say it out loud, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet little question whispers, have my best days already passed? But maybe you're mistaken. Maybe you're still attracting others. You don't realize it. Because actual attractiveness doesn't lie in your age or in outdated standards of beauty. It lives in the way you carry yourself, in the quiet strength of your presence. It shows in the steadiness of your steps, the depth in your gaze, the calmness that makes others want to hear what you have to say, even before you speak. You don't have to turn heads in a crowd. You need to be someone who makes one person, standing close, feel safe and want to stay. And in this video, I want to explore that with you. 8 signs, not flashy, not loud, but enough to prove you are still an attractive man. In fact, you might be attractive in a deeper way than you ever were in your younger years. If you've ever doubted yourself, if you've ever stood before the mirror and felt your heart sink, leave a comment. I know this feeling. So you and I can begin this journey together. It is a journey to see yourself through new eyes. And who knows, you might realize you never lost your attractiveness. You only forgot how to feel it. There was a time you were standing in line at your usual coffee shop. The barista was a young woman, probably in her 20s, with a bright face and quick, lively eyes. When it was your turn, you made a small joke, nothing too clever. Maybe it was something about how the bread looked smaller today than yesterday, or how this month's weather seemed determined to keep everyone indoors. And she laughed. Not a loud laugh or a polite, rushed chuckle, but a soft one, light as a breath, just enough to make you pause inside and wonder, did she laugh because I was funny, or just because of me? That moment might have passed quickly, but the feeling stayed. There was something in the way she looked at you as she smiled, not eager, not forced, but as if your presence somehow made the space feel lighter, the air a bit easier to breathe. And that wasn't the first time. You began to notice, sometimes younger women, your granddaughter, your friend's daughter, a new coworker, they'd smile or laugh when you spoke. And deep down, you knew your stories weren't all that special. You may have told them more than once, but they still smiled. They smiled not because of the story, but because of the storyteller. And then, quietly, you came to a realization. Laughter is a reflex of comfort. When someone laughs with you, not because you're witty, but because they feel at ease, feel close, feel safe, that is a powerful sign of attractiveness. At this stage of life, charm doesn't come from perfect punchlines. It comes from how you make people feel, simply by being there. It's in the calm of your voice, the warmth of a smile that expects nothing, the kind of gaze that tells someone they're not being judged, they're being heard. You might not know precisely what made her laugh, But you know one thing for sure. At that moment, your heart felt a little warmer. And if a man at this age can make someone smile just by being genuinely present, that alone is a kind of charm that should never be underestimated. A few days later, at the same coffee shop, same morning light slanting through the glass window, you're standing quietly by the counter, waiting your turn. The place is crowded. Behind you, a few young people wore modern clothes with earbuds and phones in hand. Then, a young barista walks over, not the same one from before. She glances at the menu, then turns to you and asks, "You come here often, don't you? Which one do you think is better, the mocha and cappuccino?" A question as light as a breeze, yet it lingers with you, because clearly she could have asked anyone or asked no one at all. But she chose to ask you. A quiet, older man, dressed, not trying to stand out. You smiled and gave her an answer, whatever you usually order. She nodded, thanked you, and chose exactly that. Nothing grand, but something within you stirred, quietly and deeply. Because it wasn't just about picking a drink, it was a sign that others, especially the young, see you as someone trustworthy. You don't have to act like you know everything at this age. You don't have to prove you're more experienced. Your years, your life, have already etched something into your presence. Something that says, without words, "I've lived, I've learned, I understand." And that draws people toward you. Not because they need profound advice, but because they're looking for a sense of safety. A quiet anchor in a world that's growing louder and more rushed. You don't need to say much, just the way you stand, calm, unhurried. The way you smile, sincere, unforced. The way you respond is never condescending, never superior. All of that, without you even trying, sends a clear message. Here is someone worth listening to, someone with depth. And that kind of quiet magnetism can't be created by youthful looks, and it can't be bought with money. It only comes with time, and the way you've chosen to live through it. One time you were sitting in the park, a newspaper in hand, a cup of hot coffee beside you. The space was quiet. Birds chirped, leaves fell here and there, and sunlight filtered through the trees. You weren't paying attention to anyone around. But then, you felt it. A gaze, softly landing on you from somewhere nearby. You looked up, almost without thinking, and across the bench, you met the eyes of a young woman. Maybe she'd been out for a walk, or perhaps she was resting with a book, pages half opened. She didn't look away quickly. She didn't smile either. She just looked, gently, slowly, as if she was reading something in your face. It wasn't a passing glance. It was a lingering glance, subtle, quiet, yet more powerful than any spoken word. Maybe she didn't mean to look that long. Maybe it was just a fleeting moment. But the truth is, her eyes stayed just a little longer than usual. And you felt it. You didn't know why she looked at you. You weren't sure if you looked especially sharp that morning, with a slightly wrinkled coat, salt and pepper hair, and your reading glasses slipped just a bit low. But you do know this. She looked, and she didn't look away right away. That is one of the most delicate signs of attraction. Not a catcall from across the street, not a polite compliment in passing, but a gaze, quiet and steady, a sign you're still good-looking, even as an older man. A sign many overlook, or don't dare to believe. But women, especially young women, have strong intuition. They may not say it out loud, but their eyes will speak for them. If you've ever felt someone looking at you that way, if you've ever caught a silent, thoughtful gaze, then believe this. There's something about you that speaks to them. You don't have to ask. You don't have to respond. Because sometimes, a look is enough. One afternoon, you stop by the neighborhood library, a place you often visit to read a few pages of an old book or to sit quietly and think. The room was nearly empty that day, plenty of open seats. Then, a young woman walked in, laptop in hand, eyes scanning the room, and she chose to sit down, right next to you, not across from you, not a few rows away, right beside you, close enough for you to hear the soft tapping of her keyboard, close enough for the faint scent of her perfume to pass by as she sat down. You were a bit surprised. For a moment you wondered, is she waiting for someone? But no. She opened her laptop and began working, as if this was the most natural choice in the world. And maybe it was. But here's something most people don't notice. The human body instinctively moves toward where it feels most comfortable and safe. In a space full of options, people unconsciously avoid what makes them uneasy and draw closer to what feels calm, grounded, and welcoming. She didn't need to know who you were. She didn't need to hear you say anything special. But what you carried with you, the way you sat, your quiet demeanor, your unhurried presence, sent a very clear signal. I don't demand anything. I am a quiet, safe space. That is one of the signs of male attractiveness that many people overlook. You don't draw others in with words, but with the energy you give off. And women, especially younger women, are incredibly sensitive to that. They might be unable to explain why, but they know they feel safe next to you. And in a world growing louder and more chaotic, that feeling is worth more than any flashy appearance. You may not have noticed, but her body chose to be near yours, not because you stood out the most, but because you made it easiest to breathe. And that is one of the most quietly beautiful expressions of attraction in a seasoned man. You remember that time you were standing at the counter of your favorite bakery, waiting to pay, when a young employee suddenly smiled, took a soft breath, and said, "You always smell so nice. I don't even know what it is, but it's always the same." She didn't know the name of your cologne. It wasn't a planned compliment. It was an honest, instinctive reaction, as if that scent had quietly made its way into her memory without her realizing when it started. And you've heard it before, from your granddaughter at home, from a woman sitting next to you on the bus, from a former coworker who once joked, "I always know when you've arrived, even before seeing you. You have a scent that's just you." You didn't set out to leave a mark. You're not wearing the most expensive fragrance on the shelf. But you know this. Scent, invisible and untouchable, is often what stays the longest. You don't need to stand out at this stage in life anymore. You choose something gentle, simple, just enough to make others feel comfortable, never overwhelmed. Maybe it's the deep notes of sandalwood, a touch of mint in the air, or just the clean scent of the same soap you've trusted since you were young. And then you realize the most attractive man isn't the one everyone talks about, but the one who leaves a lasting feeling. When you leave the room, the light may dim, your voice may fade into the noise, but your scent, that soft, barely there presence, lingers on someone's shoulder. It makes them remember you, without meaning to. It makes them smile when they catch that same scent somewhere else. And it makes them feel your presence, even when you're no longer there. Why smell matters in attraction isn't just some dreamy romantic idea. It's science, and it's intuition. Women sincerely appreciate a man who takes care of himself, and sometimes a scent that's clean, warm, and subtle can make you stand out more than anything else. You don't need to say much. You don't need designer clothes or to show off what you have. If you carry a scent that makes people want to be near you, then you're already a beautiful man. Because in the end, what stays deepest in the human memory isn't the image, isn't the sound, it's the feeling. And your signature scent as an older man, if you hold on to it, may be the quiet way you leave a part of yourself in someone's heart without saying a word. There are small moments that make your heart slow down, not out of fear and not exactly out of confusion, but because you feel like you've just been touched. That time, it was at a small birthday gathering for an old friend. The room felt warm, soft music was in the background, and everyone was deep in conversation. You stood quietly in a corner, holding a glass, smiling as you listened to a story you weren't fully paying attention to. And then someone approached, her, a woman much younger than you, not someone you knew well, but familiar from a few similar gatherings over the years. She smiled in greeting and gently placed her hand on your arm, just for a second. Not lingering, not with a clear intention, but clearly, not accidental. A brief touch, then she pulled away, as if she too was testing how it felt. For her, for you. And something strange stirred inside you, because even though it was such a light touch, subtle, entirely within the bounds of what's socially acceptable, it was enough to leave you motionless for a moment, deep within. Not because it was bold, but because it made you feel noticed, connected, appreciated. When done right, touch is one of the most powerful unspoken languages of attraction. You don't have to say a word. She doesn't have to confess anything. But that single moment, her hand on your arm, sent a quiet message. I'm here with you, and I'm not afraid to be close. It wasn't meaningless. It was a non-verbal sign of attraction, subtle but unmistakable. And if you've ever felt something like that, you know how deeply valuable it is. Because at this age, you're no longer reaching for touch to prove your masculinity. You're not looking to conquer or score points with long embraces. What you want, what you feel, is a brief, genuine connection. Enough to remind your heart, you're still alive. You still feel. Science tells us that physical touch, even the slightest one, can raise oxytocin levels, lower stress, and build deep feelings of trust. That's why a hand on the shoulder, a light touch on the back as someone passes, or even a firm handshake can shift the entire mood of a moment. And for women, touch is emotional language. They don't offer it to just anyone, only to those they feel safe with, those with whom they sense a connection. Attractive older men are rarely the ones who reach first. They don't need to. It's their calm presence, their confidence, their restraint that makes others want to step closer, to test how safe that closeness feels. And then, the touch happens. Maybe it's when she gently places her hand on your back as she moves through the crowd. Or when you say something that makes her laugh and she taps your arm ever so lightly. Or when your hands accidentally brush while reaching for the same glass. You didn't ask for it. You didn't plan it. But when it happens, you feel it. It's not love. It's not the rush of young desire. It's something much quieter. You are seen. You are touched. You are connected. And that's enough. Because intimacy for older men is no longer about how many times it happens, but about the quality of each time you've reached, through touch, through gaze, through trust. So if you've experienced moments like that, don't brush them aside. They're not random. They're signs of closeness, softness in a world that's slowly turning hard, and they're gentle reminders that you are still attractive, in a way that's real, unique, and impossible to imitate. You arrived a little late that day, just a small family gathering. Children, grandchildren, a few close friends, and some longtime neighbors. The room was buzzing with laughter and conversation. Everyone had something to say, stories to tell, opinions to share, and things to debate. At one point, the energy was so high that all you wanted was a quiet corner, a warm cup of tea, and maybe a few nods when someone turned to ask your thoughts. Nothing more. You weren't the loudest voice in the room. You didn't raise your hand. You didn't jump into conversations. You just sat there with your cup in hand. A calm, steady presence. And then, a moment came when things got a bit tangled. A disagreement, a sensitive topic, or just something no one quite knew how to handle. That's when people started to turn and look at you. No one called your name. No one asked you to speak. But their eyes, almost in quiet unison, seemed to say, "What do you think? What's your take on this? Please, say something." You didn't rush. You looked around, took a slow, steady breath, and then you spoke. Not with long speeches, not with clever philosophy. Just a few words, calm, gentle, without judgment. And slowly, heads began to nod. The tension eased. Someone changed the subject. Someone smiled. And you went back to your tea. That's when you realized something you may never have noticed before. You don't have to say much to be heard. You have to be. Because at this age, your presence doesn't need volume. It doesn't come from how often you speak or how big your words are. It comes from calm, from experience, from a quiet kind of charisma, unspoken, yet deeply felt. People don't listen to you because you're talking. They listen because when you finally decide to speak, it means something. That's the power of presence. A quality younger people often take years to understand. You don't have to chase attention. You don't have to grab the mic. You already know. Sometimes silence is a voice of its own, and that is why you're respected. How to be respected without speaking much isn't a skill. It's the result of a life lived with depth. People can feel it in the way you sit, the way you nod, the way your hand rests calmly on the table. Not hurried, not restless, just solid. The kind of attraction you carry at this age isn't something you perform, it's something you radiate. Silent confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself, is a beautiful force. You were once the leader, the speaker, the one pushing to be seen. But now, without trying, that's precisely when people begin to listen. And maybe that's why younger women, even if they don't fully understand you, still feel drawn to your steady presence. Not because you try to be manly, but because of mature masculinity. Masculinity shaped by time has a quiet power all its own. It makes others feel safe, it builds trust, and it makes you stand out, even when you never leave your seat. If you've ever been in a moment like that, when the room paused, "I'm waiting to hear what you say," comment yes below. Because your calm, your quiet strength, that stillness you carry, is something many long for, but not everyone can reach it. You may not be the loudest voice in the room, but you are the one people remember. And that is a kind of magnetism that can't be taught, can't be borrowed, and can never be faked. It comes only from you, and the years you've lived to become the man you are. The conversation had come to an end. The story had faded into silence, and the clock on the wall gently reminded everyone. It was time to stand up and leave. You looked across the table. She smiled, just a polite, gentle smile. But instead of rising to her feet, she stayed seated. Not because she needed to ask something more, Not because she was caught up in anything. She just didn't want to leave. Not yet. Her eyes wandered around the room. She took another sip of tea. She adjusted her bag, then quietly set it down again. The physical space between you didn't change, but something in the air between you grew closer. You didn't say anything. She didn't try to keep the conversation going. But the atmosphere between you felt fuller than anything just spoken, and you thought it unmistakably, even if it had no name. She was staying because of you, not because of your silver hair, not because of your deep voice, but because of the emotional presence you carried. That's what makes others linger, not for more talking, but to stay in your energy for just a bit longer. In that moment, you understood. You don't need to craft the perfect conversation. You don't need to be funny or tell stories or try to hold someone's attention. You need to be present, warm, real, and still. Because when someone doesn't want to leave, you're offering them something rare. Maybe it's a sense of safety. Maybe it's quiet comfort. Maybe it's a subtle longing they can't quite name. And here's the truth. Women feel that. Clearly. They might say, "I should go," but their feet don't move. They might glance at the clock but don't get up. They might zip their bag, but then ask one more small, unnecessary question. These are not signs of politeness. They are signs of emotion. Why do women linger after talking to you isn't a mystery. If you are an attractive older man, not by surface, but by depth, then the urge to remain near you for just a few extra minutes is only natural. They feel in you a calmness that asks for nothing, a space where they don't need to hurry, don't feel judged, don't have to perform. And in a world crowded with noise, speed, and unrealistic expectations, being near someone who makes you feel at ease is a rare gift. You don't build that presence overnight. You can't learn it from a few books. You become that man only after walking through years of life, through pain, and still choosing to live gently. Silent intimacy, the closeness that needs no touch, no words, is what makes someone stay. Not because you've promised anything, but because your presence is the quietest, most powerful invitation of all. If you've ever had a moment like that, when someone didn't want to leave, even though there was nothing left to say, then you know just how special it is. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's unforgettable. And if it's happened to you, you don't need any other proof to know that. You are an attractive man. Attractive, not because you make people stop, but because you make them never want to leave. You may not have noticed, but throughout this journey, we've been following quite clues. Small, subtle signals that speak one undeniable truth. You are still attractive. When a young woman smiles at you, not because you said something funny, but because being around you makes her feel at ease. When someone turns to you in the middle of a crowded room, not because you're the loudest voice, but because your presence brings calm and reassurance. When a glance lingers just a second longer, not dramatic, not rushed, but just enough to make your heart stir. When someone chooses to sit beside you, even though there are plenty of other seats, simply because sitting near you feels peaceful. A familiar scent makes someone think of you long after leaving the room. When a light, thoughtful touch on the shoulder or hand reminds you that you're still someone worth noticing. When you don't have to say a word, yet the entire room turns to hear what you might say. And finally, when someone stays a little longer after the conversation ends, not to keep talking, but to remain close to you for a moment more. 8 signs. 8 seemingly small moments. But together, They shine a quiet light on something significant. You are still attractive, not despite your age, but because of it. Because a man who has walked through 50, 60, 70 years of life doesn't attract in the way he once did. Chasing time, trying to be seen. He no longer needs to look young to matter. He no longer needs to impress to be remembered. He needs to be himself. And that steadiness, that refusal to perform or pretend, that is what draws people in. Inner confidence after 60. Confidence that comes from within, not from appearance. That's the real strength of a seasoned man. You've lived long enough to understand. It's not the loudest voice that carries the most influence, not the most handsome face that lingers in memory, not the youngest man who's the most desired. Because there's one thing only men like you possess: depth. Depth in the eyes that have witnessed change. Depth in the hands that have held on, let go, endured, yet still touch with gentleness. Depth in a voice that doesn't rise, but still makes people listen. And most of all, depth in a heart that doesn't need to be declared, but exists as a quiet harbor for anyone passing through your life. You are an attractive man, not because you compete, not because you are convinced, but because, by simply being there, you make others want to stay. If you've ever believed that age has taken your magnetism away, I hope this video reminded you. It never left. It's just been quiet, like you, waiting to be noticed again. And if you saw yourself in at least 3 of these signs, if your heart stirred, even just a little, because someone once smiled at you, or looked at you longer, or chose to sit near you, or touched your hand gently, or lingered after the words were done, then leave a comment beneath this video. I am still attractive. Let it be a declaration to yourself. Let it inspire other men who are quietly doubting their worth. Because the beauty of age doesn't shout, but it still turns heads. And sometimes, one brave enough to say it out loud can rekindle the confidence of thousands. Thank you for staying until the end of this journey. You're not just a listener. You're someone who will pass this on. And this world truly needs men like you.